In this course, we will study the system thinking approach and we will see how it is possible to apply system thinking approach to the Agenda 2030. We live in a world where we have to face multidimensional and connected challenges in social, environmental, and economic context. The world is more and more complex because of this increased interconnection. Let's consider climate changes and all the challenges at social, economic, and environmental levels we have to face and that have been caused by the effects of the climate changes. Extreme phenomena from droughts to floods can undermine the stability of economic, social, and political systems. The United Nations have estimated that soil degradation and the consequent loss of biodiversity have already affected more than 3 billion people. Another example is the tourism, certainly influenced by the global warming, but also by the average rise in the sea level. Let's also consider how digital transformation has impacted our lives, our companies, and has led people to make an effort to understand the changes that are occurring. The need to reskill and upskill the competencies of people working in industry, for example. And in parallel, digital transformation has changed the way we work with new professional figures that have been created, while other jobs are now obsolete. And also, let's consider the demographic evolution. According to many studies, it is expected that the world population will reach more than 9 billion people in 2050. And during this period, it is also expected that more and more people will live in cities and towns. During the same period, the total amount of people aged more than 65 will be higher than the number of children aged between 0 and 5. So we have to rethink the social organization in order to provide the society with proper measures to face with this challenge. Inequalities influence the quality of life of people as well as they can limit the possibility to access basic services such as health services, education, water. Inequalities can limit the realization of people and the protection of the human rights, as for instance when people cannot have access to a fair justice. In general, inequalities limit the personal development, hold back the economic and social mobility, and as a consequence, they slow down the economic growth. In addition, they favor uncertainty, vulnerability, and loss of faith in institutions, thus leading to social tensions and conflicts. Inequalities reduce also the capability of people and communities to adapt to climate changes and mitigate their negative impacts on the environment and on their lives. And on the contrary, it is more and more important to become able to foresee and predict, mitigate, and adapt to future dramatic events. All these challenges are complex and involve diverse actors and stakeholders, and these challenges are often the result of past attempts to fix them. And to cope with these challenges is very difficult, and often the traditional approaches result ineffective. For this reason, it is necessary to overcome the traditional approaches based on separating the individual pieces of what is studied, thus losing the big picture. Therefore, it is necessary to apply the system thinking approach. System thinking focuses on how the thing being studied interacts with the other parts of the system, a set of elements that interact to produce behavior of which it is a part. This means that instead of isolating smaller and smaller parts of the system thinking works by expanding its view to take into account larger and larger numbers of interactions This enables system thinking to be an effective approach when we are studying complex and difficult contexts. Examples of areas in which system thinking has proven its value include complex problems that involve helping many actors to see the big picture and not just their part of it. Recurring problems are those that have been made worse by past attempts to fix them. Issues where an action affects the environment, and problems whose solutions are not so obvious. Solutions that have proven to be able to introduce innovation and radical changes derive from approaches that were able to identify the complexity of the whole situation and the complexity of all the interaction with different stakeholders. The rationale behind this is that we do not live alone. We are all interconnected and we live in a world which is made up of interconnection. However, for years we have been approaching the different challenges separately. We have been dealing with them in an isolated manner. As for instance, we have separated the environmental issues from the economic issues. And we have connected the term related to sustainability only with the term and the issues related to the environment. So I will make an example by presenting the evolution of the approach that institutions, companies, and people in general have had towards the environment. We start our journey in the 17th. In that period, no attention was paid to the environment, and companies did not care about the waste treatment or the pollution in general. The consequence was an increase in the pollution levels and also in the health problems linked to the pollution. And so, in 80s, the institutions decided to deal with the problems related to the pollution and also to the increase of the health problems due to pollution by introducing strict rules and law. The idea was to apply the concept that polluters had to pay for the pollution they caused. And on the other hand, the institution decided to try to steer for a sort of protection of the environment from all the people involved in our context. So in this period, the idea was that no benefit were seen as a result of a sustainable approach. Then in 19th, companies started realizing that wastes are also due to production process if not optimized. So there is a sort of change in the perspective of companies towards the environment. Indeed, the idea is that if I invest in new equipment and tools that enable a more optimized process, I can reduce wastes, and as a consequence, I can also reduce the related costs. The investment are then seen as a possible opportunity to be taken, an opportunity that can lead to a process optimization and also return in terms of reputation. Then we arrive in 2000, and there is another further approach towards the environment. Indeed, in this period, there is the introduction of the concept of circular economy, and therefore all the environmental issues are completely integrated in the production's development. And eventually, we reach 2015 when there is the launch of the Agenda 2030. The agenda called for a broader understanding of prosperity in its social and ecological dimensions. The three dimensions, economic, environmental, and social, are now seen as interconnected and not separated as we have seen them until now. Indeed, we have been experiencing the separation of the environmental issues also from the social dimension and the social challenges. On the contrary, when we speak about sustainable development, we have to think about the three dimensions, which are the dimension related to the economic context, the dimension related to the environmental context, and the dimension related to the social context. And we have to consider that these three dimensions are strictly interconnected between them. And indeed, it is important to state that the interconnection can be seen when we act on one of the three dimensions, because every action we make for achieving a certain goal in one of the dimension has possible positive and or negative impact on the other dimensions. And therefore, again, we have to consider that these three dimensions are really interdependent from each other. And an example can be if we consider the forests and the problem related to the need for new fields to be used for agricultural intents. As for instance, if we decide to solve the problem of lack of fields to be devoted to the agriculture, we can decide to cut down trees from a forest. But if we apply this solution, we consider that we are going to threaten the biosphere in general and the biodiversity, and also the possibility for the forest to be part of the mitigation of the climate, and also to be active in the role of mitigating the possible negative impact of climate changes, as for instance for the floods. And therefore, there will be an increase in the disasters related to climate changes, which will impact negatively the environment, and also they will lead to an increase of all the social issues with people that will be will have to move from a country or a part of the world to another in order to find a new prosperous lands. And also we have to consider that climate changes will impact on the towns and communities, and therefore we will have also economic consequences. Therefore, it is important to understand that we need to be aware of the consequences that our actions can have, so as to anticipate possible conflicts and also to anticipate the possible benefits in the other dimensions. The definition of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals has been driven by the idea that all our actions have impact on the other dimensions. And this is the idea behind the Agenda 2030. Indeed, the idea is that sustainability is a dynamic system with interdependencies and interlinks that go beyond the involved stakeholders. And indeed, the idea is that in order to achieve the Agenda 2030, it is necessary to apply an holistic approach and all the multi-stakeholder have to be involved in the achievement of the agenda and in the implementation of activities that can lead to the achievement of the agenda. This means that all the stakeholders have to be able to see the big picture and overcome the boundaries of their own area of expertise in order to approach the complexity from different perspective with a wider vision. This is why different studies call for applying the system thinking to the implementation of the Agenda 2030. The idea is that thanks to system thinking, it will be possible to have methods and tools that enable cooperation among the different stakeholders involved. And these tools will allow also to understand and fully appreciate all the relationships from the diverse dimension and what can be the possible conflicts or the possible benefits. And therefore, the idea is to map all the relationship between the three dimensions and for what concerns the Agenda 2030, also the different sustainable development goals so as to be able to overcome the boundaries from the institutional and legal point of view. And while mapping all the SDGs, the interlinks, the interaction, the synergies, and possible trade-off among them, it is also important to contextualize the possible impact according to the different countries, business, and so on. In this manner, it will be possible to promote synergies between the Sustainable Development Goals and the achievement, anticipate possible conflicts, and define also the mitigation action that can support the overcoming of the possible conflicts. In the next slides, I will present some examples related to the mapping of the interlinks between SDGs. The Agenda 2030 defines the 17 SDGs as an integrated whole. This means that all the SDGs are interlinked between them, and that it is important to always keep in mind that the interlinks are fundamental and crucial in order to achieve the whole agenda. So if we consider again our dimension, we can see how each of the SDG can be linked to one of the dimension. However, we have to consider also that some of the SDGs are cross-dimensional. We will now analyze one SDG for each dimension. In this manner, we are going to see the interlinks between the SDG we will analyze and other SDGs, and also how the impact, both positive and or negative, can influence also other aspects of the dimensions. For each SDG analyzed, we will have two arrows. The green one will highlight the possible positive impacts or synergies, while the gray arrow will indicate possible conflicts. We will start by analyzing the SDG 2, which is related to the dimension of the society, and we will see how there will be impacts, both positive or negative, on other SDGs. SDG 2 aims to end all forms of hunger and malnutrition by 2030, making sure all people have sufficient and nutritious food the whole year. This involves promoting sustainable agriculture, supporting small-scale farmers and equal access to land, technology, and markets. It also requires international cooperation to ensure investment in infrastructure and technology to improve agricultural productivity. Among the different synergies and conflicts that SDG 2 can have on diverse SDGs, we will start focusing on the positive impact that SDG 2 can have on SDG 8, which really refer to the possibility to achieve a sustainable economic growth and the decent work for all people in the world. In this sense, we have to consider that SDG 2 integrates and links food security, nutrition, and sustainable and climate resilient agriculture. And that the focus is given on the role of small producers in the agriculture sectors and especially women. For this reason, by acting on this focus, it will be possible to contribute to the creation of new decent jobs for all and also to increase the possibility for women to access financial services, knowledge and markets and therefore it will be possible to contribute positively also to the achievement of SDG 5, which is focused on the gender equality. On the other hand, it is important also to consider that two of the most obvious ways to lift agricultural productivity are to expand access to irrigation and to increase the use of synthetic fertilizer. And this will lead to a negative impact on SDG 6 and 14, which are mostly related to water and to the pollution in oceans and seas, and also on the environment, so SDG 15, indeed, and non-sustainable agriculture and an increase in the usage of lands for agriculture goals could have negative effects on the environment, so water pollution, deforestation, and so on. In this slide, I have reported most of the synergies or conflicts that the SDG 2 has with other SDGs. In particular, I would like to highlight how SDG 12 can be considered as a mitigator itself. Indeed, while SDG 2 focuses more on the production and the nutritional outcomes, SDG 12 focuses on the processing, distribution, and procurement of the food system, and also on the sustainable production and consumption. In this manner, it will be possible to consider SDG 12 as a sort of mitigator of the negative impacts on the environment due to the SDG 2. SDG 9 is mainly related to the economic dimension. In summary, SDG 9 intends to build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. Infrastructure are fundamental in order to provide people with safe roads or to allow goods to be transported, or also to enable people to use internet, for example, and access education formats also online. In this sense, if we act to build infrastructure of quality and that can be also sustainable and resilient, we can say that we can contribute to the development of sustainable, inclusive, and resilient cities and communities, which is the goal of the Sustainable Development Goal 11. And since we are going to develop cities that are inclusive thanks to the infrastructure of quality, we can also say that we will have a positive impact on the SDG 10, which aims at reducing inequalities. And also, we will have a positive impact on SDG 3, which focuses on health and well-being by creating a network of infrastructure that will enable the medicine of the future. On the other hand, we have to consider also that we can have some negative impact on the environment. Indeed, if we increase the amount of infrastructure, as for instance roads, we can also lead to an increase in the emissions that will impact on the climate changes, and therefore they will lead to a change in the behavior of the ecosystems. In this slide, I reported the summary of many of the synergies and interlinks of SDG 9 with other SDGs. In particular, I would like to highlight that a positive impact can be obtained by acting on SDG 9 also for what concerns the SDG 2. Indeed, it is important to consider that when we speak about the food waste and the lack of food in certain countries, the majority of these problems are caused by the distribution and the transport of the food. And therefore, thanks to the increase in the infrastructures, it will be possible to improve all the logistic services, and therefore it will be possible also to reduce food losses. The Sustainable Development Goal 14 is mainly linked to the environmental dimension. However, it has strong links also with the society and economy. Indeed, when we speak about the Sustainable Development Goal 14, we are speaking not only about the preservation and conservation and restoring of seas and oceans, but also of the possibility for people working in the fishing industry to improve their situation and their lives. SDG 14 aims to conserve and sustainably use the world's ocean, seas, and marine resources. It focuses on human interaction with the ocean, with the seas, and the marine resources. It is underpinned by targets addressing conservation and sustainable use of the ocean, and includes also the protection of coastal zones and the reduction of all the forms of overfishing and illegal fishing. So, ocean and coastal ecosystems are essential for the mitigation of the climate, and are also directly affected by the climate changes. Restoring and protecting the health of the ocean, of the coasts, and also of the marine resources contributes to strengthening the resilience and the adaptive capacity of both the natural and human system to climate change. These are the goal of the SDG 13 climate actions. And therefore, if we act on the SDG 14, we can positively impact on the SDG 13. In addition, it is really important to say that the climate change causes also a problem related to the health of humans because of the increase in temperature, for example, but also causes a lot of problems related to the different catastrophic phenomena. And in this sense, the most vulnerable groups are those who are mainly hit by this kind of disasters. And therefore, if we can contribute to achieve the SDG 13, we can also contribute to the achievement of SDG 10, which is reduce inequalities, and also SDG 1, which is focused on the eradication of poverty. In this slide, I have summarized many of the positive impact that we can have by acting on SDG 14. Among the others, I would like to highlight that at least 50% of the population working in the fishing industry is made up of women, and often the women are underpaid and with no regular contracts. One of the targets of the SDG 14 focuses on the possibility to create new decent jobs for this kind of vulnerable groups, and therefore it will be possible to achieve gender equality and also SDG 8, so decent work and economic growth, by achieving the target of the SDG 14. The agenda calls for applying a systemic approach and an holistic approach that can enable the mapping of the relationship and the causes related to each of the dimensions and of the SDGs in order to overcome what are the borders related to the different sectors involved, as well as the institutions and the borders in general of the countries, and also the different cultural context. This is important in order to embrace a whole of government and whole of society perspective and achieve Agenda 2030. Many companies have started integrating the SDGs in their strategies and in their everyday life. And also Rold has decided to integrate the SDG in its strategy and vision. Rold is a medium enterprise leader in the production of safety components for household appliances. It is located in Italy and has 3 plants all in the north of Italy. And we have a focus on the mechatronic components. We have 4 main divisions. The first one is the rolled appliance, which is the traditional division of rolled, which is in charge of producing mechatronic components for household appliances. Then we have the rolled industrial division, which was created after the development of an Industry 4.0 platform, which was developed internally to Rold, and that aims at supporting all the manufacturing companies in the optimization of their process. Then we have the Air Lab, which is an innovation lab with a multidisciplinary approach, where research activities are carried out to ideate innovative solutions. And eventually, we have the Rold Academy, which has been launched in September 2020 and which aims at fostering lifelong learning and cross-contamination and all the activities to improve skills and competencies both for people working in Rold, both for people outside Rold. So, although many of the principles of the Agenda 2030 are already uh, within the world approach, vision, and values, we decided to increase our involvement towards the sustainability so as to be part of the changer and so to support the achievement of the Agenda 2030 uh, by involving many people, increasing the efforts in research and innovation activities, and also disseminating the importance of the Agenda 2030. When we started the process of integrating SDGs in Rold, we decided to create a path made up of three main steps. The first step is focused on the need for spreading the knowledge across all companies' level. The knowledge is related to the Agenda 2030, to the SDG, and to the importance of achieving them in order to achieve the sustainable development. The second step is focused on the need to foster the awareness in each people working around that everyone can make the difference in order to achieve the agenda. And eventually, the third step will be focused on the definition of holistic and systemic solution to be integrated in Rold vision and strategy so as to be part of the change. It is important to say that this is an ongoing process that started at the end of 2020. In order to spread the knowledge about the Agenda 2030, we started with the definition of 17 ambassadors, one per each SDG, and we selected people working involved from different divisions and with different roles. The ambassadors have then attended individual courses focusing on the SDG they represent. And the ambassador, after having attended the course on the SDG they represent, will lead workshops together with some coach and facilitator in order to explain the SDG to other people working enrolled and working with them, it will be possible to define possible solution to be then integrated in rolled vision and strategy. These are the 17 ambassadors of the SDG enrolled. For each workshop, there is an introduction to the Agenda 2030 so that we can really spread the knowledge about Agenda 2030 across the whole company. Then there is the focus on a specific SDG. We have planned to have 17 workshops, so one workshop per each SDG. And each workshop has a focus on one specific SDG. The idea is that the people participating in a workshop will then speak about the SDG they have analyzed in detail with people who attended other workshops, so as to create connection, interlinks also among people. And then for in each workshop there are activities in subgroups to determine possible proposal that can be integrated and rolled and that can be then integrated also in the strategy of rolled. The idea is that the result of these activities in subgroups can be proposals related to new initiatives to be done enrolled, or proposal for product innovation, process innovation, or the development of new product or processes. The ambassadors collect the solutions that are proposed during the workshops, and then they will present the solutions to the board of the management. And the solution presented will be analyzed and assessed, and will be then defined a 3-year strategic plan with the priorities we have defined. And there will be also intermediate assessment, at least one per year. The result of the process will be a co-creation of our strategies for contributing to the achievement of the Agenda 2030.